Welcome to the Freedom Founder Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Duggar. Now, there is a saying that I've often heard stated: the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. Now, sometimes it wasn't your plan, and sometimes you feel a little bit set up and then it fails. And my guest today has had the experience of a bait and switch circumstance occur, and he's learned a lot through the process of many different challenges, but also overcoming those challenges to do what he's doing today. So, Jamie, I want to thank you for joining me on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me, Zach.
Absolutely. Now, I love to start the conversation just to get an idea of where your kind of start came from, and kind of as you got into that point at which you became an entrepreneur. But what were you doing at the beginning of your career?
Great question. Yeah, I started my career. I've been in the financial services industry as a financial planner for about creeping up on 20 years here. So I think this is my 8th year doing this. And I started off with some big name companies, one being a company called Morgan Stanley, where I was there for about 5 or 6 years, to a company called Fidelity Investments, which a lot of people will know, recognize that name for sure. I was there for about 9 years before I decided to launch my own company. So for the majority of my career, college, I've been in this world, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, some capacity or another. And then, so you were at Fidelity. You were there for, you said, about 9 years. Was that correct?
9 years with
Okay.
Fidelity, yeah, and then I decided
And
to make the leap and make a change.
yeah, why? What was that decision? What was the deciding factor for you? I mean, imagine if you'd been there that long, you're probably doing pretty well and making decent go of things.
Yeah. I think the biggest impetus for my desire to leave that environment, and it was a great experience. I mean, I learned a lot. I learned how, a lot about the financial planning process. I actually coached and trained financial advisors for a couple of years there, so I had a great experience being able to go around not only the Southern California where I'm located, but also across the country and do some coaching and training of other advisors with the firm. So I made a lot of friends, had a lot of great relationships. But the one thing that really always dug at me and gnawed at me, so to speak, was I had 450 clients I was responsible for, 450 people, or 450 households, that probably 900 people altogether that I was responsible for.
Yeah,
And as a certified financial planner, there's a particular process we're required to take people through and abide, so we can abide by a standard. And when you're working with that many people, you're skimming the surface on a lot of those relationships, and you never really get to know the client like you're supposed to if you're going to give real financial advice. And that's why, frankly, if you look at all their disclaimers and disclosures on all their website and wherever, it simply says, this is not advice, this is education. And if I'm going to hand over the keys to $1 million, $2 million, $5 million portfolio to you, I better be getting some advice, not just education around it.
sure.
And that really, gnawed at me for a few years there towards the tail end. And I decided, I had looked at some other positions within the firm, both here in California and across the country. And the reality is that being on the West Coast with an East company, you're kind of on an island. If you don't want to work in the branch offices, you've got to be able to move. And at the time, it just wasn't. I was wrapping up a divorce at that time. All the kids that through our blended family here were still in high school. They weren't even in college yet, which they are now. Some of them are now.
Yep.
So it made it a little challenging. Decided at that point, maybe it's time to look outside of Fidelity, and that's where the proverbial bait and switch you mentioned came to be.
Sure. Sure. Okay. All right. So the opportunity to start doing something on your own was making that change, making that decision to become able to be more involved in working with the families and households that you're serving. Now, when you made that change, was it immediate overnight success? I mean, you jumped right into it, and then all of a sudden the clients are here and you're working with them and you're having to hire more people, or
No,
how
it
did
was
that go?
a complete opposite, frankly, and the what ultimately drove me to build Woodson Wealth Management, which is the investment company and the financial planning company that I run now, was as I had started to look at opportunities outside of Fidelity, I met with recruiters and so on, and I was actually wooed away from the firm by another small registered investment advisory company in San Diego, who shall remain nameless. But the promise that I had in leaving Fidelity, and what the ultimate impetus for me leaving Fidelity was, I was going to be able to do multiple things that I'm very passionate about. One being coaching and training the advisors on the team. I was going to work with, potentially work with some of my, the firm's clients, and potentially bring some clients to the firm by way of Fidelity. And then also, I was going to be able to do some business development. So things like this, right? Webinars and seminars and podcasts and business development to try to drum up business for the firm. And I'm passionate about all three of these things, and I feel like I do a pretty good job at them. And it's definitely different, having conversations like this, and try to market yourself and develop business this way versus, picking up the phone and making, 1,000 phone calls a day. That's just not my cup of tea. I'm not a cold caller, so to speak. So I left Fidelity with the promise of a reasonable, a pretty nice salary and all these benefits and so on and so forth. And within 6 weeks, they reduced my salary by 60% and told me the only job they wanted me to do was focus on going out and getting my Fidelity clients, which was we had a non-solicitation agreement in place, and my attorney who I hired to help me with the transition, basically said, there's no way we're going to allow you to do just that.
Yeah.
So within 6 weeks, turned upside down. And from an ethics perspective, there was no way I was going to be able to try to, even attempt to woo people away from a firm that they've been with for years to bring them to this company, which I didn't trust at all at that point. So I decided at that stage of the game, I'm never going to let anybody control my own destiny, and decided to launch my own firm. And now here we are with, 4 years in, and I have 4 other advisors on the team aside from myself, and we have clients all over the country. It's been pretty, not only challenging, but a pretty incredible experience at the same time.
Absolutely. So you got wooed away with some promises that ended up being a little more empty than they were originally stated as to become. And with the idea, it sounds like the idea that you would then go and then steal clients back from your former company and bring them over to this new one. Gosh, that definitely makes it more difficult I imagine more difficult for you to then be able to trust that new employer, that they have integrity that you wanted to demonstrate in your work.
That was the biggest thing. And I'm nobody special, but I feel like I'm a pretty ethical guy. And I just couldn't in good faith do that, especially as a certified financial planner who has to abide by a certain code of ethics and fiduciary perspective. There's no way I could do that just to feed my family. So, luckily we have, had some savings to fall back on and so on. But I mean, I unfortunately, I hear that this type of thing is particular in our industry. I don't know why it is this way, but I've talked to other peers and, colleagues and people that I have in my network over the last few years, and there are a lot of experiences like that. So, if that's the type of the business owner that you are, and that's a shame on you. I mean, it's not cool for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've heard similar stories in other industries as well, where the person was brought away with some promises that really didn't come to fruition. And at that point, former employer is not necessarily, in many circumstances, going to be able to or willing to take you back because you've moved on. So so you're moving on now resulted in you having to make a decision to start something new. Had this been on your mind for a long period of time? Had you been considering starting your own business?
Looking back, maybe I should have just done that from the beginning.
Okay.
Maybe made the change myself. Maybe I just didn't have the confidence in myself to be able to do it. Maybe it was I just didn't understand this side of the world, the business, so to speak. I mean, I went from basically being a W-2 employee in a major, large firm a very large business that's, nationwide business, where I basically just had to wake up every morning, go into the office, take care of my clients, you know, drink the free coffee and go home. I mean, I didn't really have to think about things like compliance and insurance and bookkeeping and taxes and corporate structure and all the things that have to go into building a business from the ground up.
Right.
And I was effectively thrust into that. So my back was against the wall. I didn't really have a choice at that point. I wasn't going to go somewhere else. It was the middle of COVID. This was April of 20, everybody.
Okay.
So it wasn't like I was going to go off and just go get another job somewhere else. People weren't hiring.
Right.
They were laying off people, especially in our industry. We didn't know if the market was going to go up, down, sideways. Nobody knew. And it was
Right.
a very challenging time. So I basically went from 450 clients and, a great salary and all the other benefits and everything else, and was thrust into a situation where I had 0 clients, 0 revenue, $0 coming in.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you overcome that? I mean, to be honest, that sounds like a pretty scary situation for you, for your family. And how did you overcome that, especially during the time at which it was during the pandemic, early months within that when, a lot of unknowns were in place.
A lot of unknowns. I think the biggest thing is you're leaning on your friends and family, right? If you don't have a support system around you and you don't leverage those resources, I don't know how I would have been able to make it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
For sure.
luckily my wife and I made some investments, we have a little Airbnb that, we have on our property here and during the pandemic, nobody could go anywhere. So they were staying in Airbnbs and so we benefited from that, and that helped keep us afloat.
Yep.
So we had diversified streams of income. We had some savings we could rely on, and being able to leverage, our loved ones, first and foremost, as a support system. And I think some of it comes down to just you have to be scrappy to be a business owner, right? You have to figure out where you're going to get your next client from. And so I tried everything, man. I mean, like, if you look at my profit and loss statement from the first couple of years, you'd probably want to, throw up on it, because there was so much money going out, because I kept trying different things to see what was going to work. It was an unknown territory, I'm sponsoring local events here in our town. I'm using Facebook ads to drum up business. I'm using, different lead generation sources and companies that are out there and marketing, whatever. And then over time I saw, like, okay, we have to double down on this thing because it's working, and we just stop doing that thing. And it's wash, rinse, repeat. And that's what you're doing over and over and over again. The life of an entrepreneur and a business owner. And that's how I was able to make it, man.
It's scrappy and getting started.
Yeah.
Yeah. The unknowns and those things that you said you didn't have to worry about: compliance, bookkeeping, other regulations, at some point bringing in other people into the business and having employees, advertising, where you'll get those, what will work best, what do you sponsor, what do you not sponsor. So now that you said 4 years in, when you look back at that, the unknowns that may have been some of the barriers to getting started even sooner, what are your thoughts on that now? What would your encouragement be for others who are considering starting their own business, but the unknowns, such as those legal or compliance things that they have to go through to get to that starting point, and the unknowns about business and their clients and whether or not they'll be able to survive through the different challenges they have to go through?
I learned a lot of lessons in that area. I think there's 3 things. First and foremost, it's you got to be very careful who has their hand in your pocket. Everybody will be reaching out to you through LinkedIn and Facebook and whatever channels they possibly can. I ended up having to unsubscribe from 4 random emails that I was a part of this morning, because somebody wants to have their hand in my pocket that I never signed up for. If you're an entrepreneur, you're on somebody's list, and they're going to want to get their hand in your pocket. So you have to be very careful about who you're handing over that credit card number to, because I made those mistakes in the first year or two, where you think you're going to be able to pay somebody to solve, take that work off your plate and solve your problems, and it doesn't always work that way. So you have to ask a lot of questions about the work that somebody's going to do for you, and be very cautious of who's taking your money, so to speak.
Yep.
Along with that, I think if you can find someone's or a company or a person who has expertise and do not have expertise, and once you've vetted them and you've learned more about their process and so on, offloading some of that work so you can focus on your primary objective, which is growing your business and doing your highest and best work, is the number one thing, right? Right. Close second, at least, right, to the first. We use
Okay.
we in our
Okay.
world we have we're highly regulated, so I knew compliance was going to be the thing that it still keeps me up at night, but it's offload as soon as I possibly could. So I didn't have to worry about dealing with the state of California or registering other states and managing the compliance piece. Once I made enough money, that was the first thing I decided to offload, and it was an
Yep.
amazing decision. And the last piece is hiring good people that can help you grow the business and scale as part of your team, not just like, outsourcing somebody that can help you with Facebook ads, or a web developer that's, overseas that you can hire through like Upwork or Fiverr or all these, websites that are out there. Somebody legitimately who is part of your team. I hired a gal who is a stay-at-home mom, wanted to work a few hours a week, and had almost no experience in the financial services industry. And she lives in Georgia. I live in San Diego, but we just hit it off in our initial conversations. And if it was not for her, I don't even know if I'd be standing here having this conversation with you, because
Sure.
she took it upon herself to do learn the process, learn the business, learn about me and how I work, and so on. She's able to offload a lot of the other work that I don't do well.
Yep.
And it was the best. It was scary to make that investment, but incredibly valuable in the long run, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. And I like how that's a cross country relationship, but at the same time, one of the best investments that you made in your business, to be able to have someone that could assist you, come alongside and take off your plate some of the tasks that you didn't need to focus on as you continue to grow your business, but definitely need to still be completed, and to have somebody that you could rely upon to be able to do that. And then that compliance piece, as you said, to get
Mm-hmm.
somebody else that just has that additional knowledge and can make that more streamlined and take care of it, so you don't have to worry about it as much as you would if you're taking it all on your own self. Now, there's a part of it in what you decide to do in life that comes down to why. Why do you do what you do? For you, what is it that is about finance or helping families or individuals? What's the reason, or why do you do what you do?
When I was young, and I tell this story all the time. So for those of you that follow my social media feeds and what have you, I know you've heard this before, but I'll share it again for those that haven't. When I was very young, 7 or 8 years old, somewhere in that range, my parents divorced, and it was very challenging for them. It was myself and my younger sister at the time. She was probably 2 years old, maybe 3 years old. My mom and dad got together when they were very, very young. She had me when she was 20 years old, which is incredibly, still boggles my mind. But very little education, blue collar workers, and they struggled. And once that divorce was finalized, my dad now had to go from trying to put a roof over one family's household, now to doing it for two households, with two kids. And so he worked multiple jobs, and my mother worked multiple jobs. And there was a point in time when one of my best friends growing up, he and his family brought over a box of groceries, and I remember them putting it on the counter. I recognize at that point, like, if somebody else's family is bringing us groceries, it's got to be tough, to for have another family bring food over to put food in your pantry because they can't make ends meet. That's a challenge. And even though I was 7 or 8 years old, that memory still sticks with me. And luckily, I've been blessed that he's still one of my best friends. Even 40 years later, we're still very, very good friends. And it just speaks to the person that he and his mother were. I remember it was the two of them that delivered those goods to us. But I remember there were times when I was laying awake at night as a little boy, having that experience where I remember telling myself, if I ever have kids, I never want them to have the same experiences. And that's pretty like crazy for, a 7 or 8 year old to be thinking, right? But that's how stressful and how much anxiety I had even at that age, or being able to make ends meet and provide for my family, and the stress that my parents were going under or were under. And I think that's effectively what propelled me into the world of finance, because I always wanted to learn about business and growing business and being a business person, but investing and letting my money earn money, and buying stocks and trading. And I had a passion for that stuff early on. And one of my mandates for myself, and kind of my true north, so to speak, is I never want my clients to ever feel those same stresses related to money that I did as a kid. Right? I certainly don't want my own kids feeling that way, and hopefully they don't. But that's effectively why I do what I do. It's stemmed from those experiences early on, and making sure everybody has their ducks in a row. And that's the kind of the work we do, right? We don't just do investments. We help with things like insurance and estate planning, which is incredibly important. College planning, things of that nature, which will allow people to. We touch pretty much every aspect of people's lives. And recently, I've been doing a lot more work on the divorce side of things, my divorce financial planning company, helping people navigate the divorce side of things. And if they're going through a divorce and they need to figure out who's going to get what and divide things up equitably and fairly, help with things like spousal support calculations and alimony and so on. So again, similar comment, like my experiences when I was younger and my own experiences going later in life have given me a passion to do that kind of work as well.
Yeah. I mean, you can have those early childhood experiences and those personal experiences help shape and define the work that you do. It also helps shape and define the person you become. And when you can combine that with a service that you are passionate about and able to help people, you mentioned your family, and of course, absolutely number one. But then you're also taking that same mindset and approach to working with others, which I'd love to hear, because that means that you are somebody who has the integrity to not just look at how they can help you make more money, but really how you can help them and establish that financial future and stability for themselves and their future generations. Love it. And then same thing with the divorce finance side, because you've had your own personal experience both in childhood and as an adult, knowing that there are some challenges that one may go through during that time, to be able to successfully navigate that and help someone navigate that. I mean, it's just different than somebody who hasn't had those experiences. You come with a different mindset, different heart to it. Again, it's not just about earning the next dollar for yourself. It's about helping those individuals.
Absolutely.
So you've gone from 0 clients, $0 in management, under management, to where are things at today? And are your clients primarily localized? You mentioned somebody in Georgia that works for you, but are your clients across the country, or what does that look like now?
Yeah, we have clients all over the country, mostly on the eastern and western seaboards. So we have clients in Washington, Oregon, California. We have some sprinkled in the Midwest and also in Texas. And then we have clients pretty much up and down the eastern seaboard as well. I think one of the benefits that COVID provided was the use of Zoom for these types of engagements, where 5 years ago, I would have focused on, the 20 miles outside of my office here in San Diego, or just outside of San Diego, because you're locked by geography. Now, with like this video conferencing, there's really no reason why we can't work with people all over the country. Again, we've been doing this almost 4 years, and I have yet to meet any of our clients face to face. It's Sierra, who's the gal that I mentioned that I had hired to help me about 2.5 years ago now. We just met her for the first time face to face last September. So we had worked together for 2 years without even meeting each other face to face, and working with each other every day. And it's just, so there's no reason why we can't work all over the country, which has been great. We have do things a little bit differently here. So we're not just primarily focused on managing people's money. We do some of that work as well, but we really focus on the financial plans that we build for people. So people that work with us don't have to hand over the keys to their portfolio. Our financial planning is effectively a financial planning subscription, where we ask people to work with us for a year, and they pay a certain amount of money every month to gain access to us and to work with us on for that year or so. And just a little bit different than other firms that are out there. And we work with about two. We work primarily the people that we work with are somewhere between the age of 30 and 50, maybe 35, 55, somewhere in that range.
Okay.
Younger crowd. We have 155 clients now, sprinkled all throughout the country across all of us as advisors. And we just I added more advisors just to help us continue to grow, and the demand for that type of service where people, I get it, in this day and age, it's tough to hand over the keys to the portfolio to somebody that you're not sitting kneecap to kneecap with, and in this environment. So people can be a little bit concerned about that. And with our setup, we can manage investments if people need the help, and if they don't, they can still get the help that they need with our financial planning service.
Yeah, I think that's great, because there are many people who do feel like that's the option they have is just to hand over the keys, so when they can be involved in the process, and perhaps there's somebody else that they still have a system with other aspects, but getting that direct support, planning, and coming from that mindset of, I just want you to be set up and stable for now and into the future. So I think the work you're doing is incredible. And I also agree that Zoom has made a lot of opportunities available that weren't there before. So now you not only can help people within your 20-mile radius, but you can help people across the country, which is incredible.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I admire the work you're doing, Jamie, and I want to make sure I ask you one question I always like to ask my guests. If you were to be handed $1 million today with no restrictions attached to that as to what you do, how would you invest that either in your business or another endeavor, and why?
That's I probably, I would probably spend the money buying an RV, and because this is our dream. This is our term plan for my wife and I. The plan is that we will eventually sell our property here in California and take the proceeds of that and buy an RV where we can travel the country and see all of our clients face to face for the first time.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, that benefits the client, and it's a win-win all the way. Clients benefit because we get a chance to meet face to face and share a meal and do those types of things, and have really a more person than we can have now in this environment.
Yeah.
But it also gives me and my wife and our family an opportunity to see parts of the country that I've never seen in my life, right? And this amazing country, I grew up in Rhode Island, and I moved to California when I was 20 years old. That trip took 4 days, and I've seen the rest of the country other than from 36,000 feet up in an airplane. And so I've never been to Yellowstone. I've never been to Grand Canyon, places like that. I know there's a lot out there that I'm missing. So being able to have that experience, that life experience, coupled with the experience of being able to do the work that I do and see our clients face to face, and especially on the divorce side, a lot of the men and women we work with, they could use some hand holding through some of that process, and being there to be a support system for them would be amazing. So that's how I would spend the cash. There'd probably be a lot left over, and I don't know what I would do with it, but that would be the first things that I would spend the money on for sure.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate that answer, because it does speak to, again, your integrity and the work that you're doing to be able to not only take that trip and see places you haven't seen, but then see these people that you have been helping along the way, and then some of them that really could benefit from that in-person interaction and direct support along the journey that they're in right now. So I think that's a great goal to have and dream to have. So I hope you achieve that in the coming years as you're able to continue to help more people along the way, and take that business on the road.
Well,
document the process.
We will definitely do that, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the kind words, and thanks again for having me on.
Absolutely, Jamie. Thank you.